This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
Air travel is commonplace in the world today. And to compete economically in that world, you need a world-class airport.
Today, we are the 6th busiest airport in the way of operations in the United States, 7th in the world.
Charlotte Douglas International Airport, the region's economic powerhouse.
Since 1982, the airport has quadrupled in size.
We have 173 nonstop destinations out of Charlotte.
And to never forget its history, it's home to the Carolina's Aviation Museum, a museum in transition.
So this museum is trying to tell that story, not only of the airport, but of aviation airspace in North Carolina. North Carolina was first in flight.
And at the North Carolina Air National Guard 145th Airlift Wing, retirees turned archivists work to save history.
We have so much here. I mean, I consider it a national treasure.
Charlotte Douglas International Airport, from inception in the 1930s to powerhouse economic driver in the modern era, on this trail of history. High-tech, modern, convenient, and even after more than 80 years, Charlotte Douglas International Airport, or CLT, is ever growing. Opened in the summer of 2018, the new A concourse features the latest traveling comforts and an internationally recognized high-tech public art installation where real-time airport data gets transformed into unique visual displays.
It's constantly changing. It's never the same thing because it's processing new data all the time. And we've gotten lots of folks say, I got to the airport early just so I could go down and see that before I left on my flight.
And throughout CLT, a universal symbol of Southern hospitality, white rocking chairs.
The rocking chairs absolutely are iconic for CLT. Rocking chairs in airports started in Charlotte.
Originally a part of an exhibit that showcased front porches, the rockers quickly turned into a popular mainstay.
I've seen people stalk other people to get a seat in a rocking chair.
But how did it all begin? In the 1920s, private grass landing strips were scattered about. One called Cannon Field welcomed the first airmail delivery to Charlotte, and even a few celebrities.
Amelia Earhart was one of the early passengers. There's a photo of her standing in front of her plane. This is like stepping into the big leagues for Charlotte.
But while the grass fields might have worked for barnstorming and the early days of airmail, much bigger planes were the future.
And by mid-1930s, the airlines that brought in the mail or that brought in the passengers say, we can't land at a field like this anymore. Our big planes need paved runways.
So the airport started as in its first commercial service in 1938 with a very small operation, and the airport was built in its location as a WPA project. The workers came in on the railroad that's right across the front of the airport and stopped at the high point, which was the station Juneau, and got out all the equipment and started building the airport.
The Charlotte Municipal Airport might have been born out of a Depression-era jobs program, but it was World War II that put the airport on a flight path of expansion and economic impact.
The airport had some very humble beginnings. Soon after they built the airport, the United States entered World War II. The government took the airport and made it Morris Field, which was a military training base for bomber pilots.
As in many parts of the country, our growth was backed by the government. The military invested nearly $6 million in facility and runway improvements. After the war, and no longer needed by the military, the airport returned to civilian operations. Back in the early 50s, the city renamed it Douglas Municipal Airport in honor of former Mayor Ben Douglas. According to historians, Douglas was instrumental in the airport's early construction and its selection by the military as a training base during the war. Along with the new name came a brand new terminal.
I remember how they operated at that time was to line up aircraft across the tarmac and have people follow a walkway out to each aircraft with somebody peeling off people that were going on this flight and peeling off people that were going on another flight. I mean, they'd have like 13 airplanes parked on the ramp.
This new terminal sets the stage for the next evolution at the airport, serving as an airline hub and economic driver.
The city built what we still call the old terminal, and from that facility, the airport began to grow airline service, became a hub for Eastern Airlines in the 1960s. Piedmont eventually took the role of the hub carrier in the 70s.
And part of that legacy is here at the North Carolina Transportation Museum in Spencer. Volunteers have been tediously reassembling this Piedmont Airlines DC-3. One of the volunteers is former Piedmont pilot Bill Wilkerson.
We have been slowly but surely piecing this airplane back together.
A Knoxville, Tennessee native with a passion for aviation, he eventually landed a job at Piedmont Airlines.
Well, it was exciting. It was, my childhood dream was to become a pilot, a commercial pilot, make a living. Like my mother was insisting that I just get a job, and so I had to make it a job. It had to be a legitimate job.
Wilkerson's first aircraft assignment, the Japanese-built YS-11.
Piedmont was a very progressive company. Our cockpits, I know this for a fact, our cockpits from a pilot standpoint was more sophisticated than Pan Am's.
The Winston-Salem-based company, founded by Thomas Davis, was known for its Southern hospitality, and that included its signature in-flight Krispy Kreme donuts.
They were very passenger conscious, and they would do whatever it would take or whatever they could to accommodate the passengers.
Former Air Force pilot Carl Gamble went to work at Piedmont in 1974.
I made captain in 5 years, and the airline really began to expand.
He stayed with the airline through the 1989 merger with U.S. Air.
By the time I retired in 2003, after 29 years with the airline, I was flying the A330 out of Charlotte, London, Frankfurt, Paris.
But it was the March 27, 1984 Piedmont Flight 451 from Charlotte to Miami, with a stop in Charleston, that Gamble remembers most.
Out of Charleston, when we were going into Miami, just before we landed, the flight attendant called me on the interphone and said, "We're being hijacked." And I said, "Hijacked?" She said, "Yeah, we got this passenger who just gave me a note, said his name is Lieutenant Spartacus, and he has 2 accomplices with him, and they brought a bomb on the airplane, and unless we take them to Havana, they're going to blow this airplane up."
Gamble and the crew complied, landing safely in Cuba, where the Cubans arrested the lone hijacker. The incident faded from the headlines over the years, but never for the pilot.
And something I'll never forget.
Wilkerson recalls his first Piedmont flight into Charlotte back in the 1970s.
And I'm looking for Charlotte, and I can't find Charlotte. And finally I see a steeple coming out of the trees, and then there's a building. There's the city, the airport is over here. And when I landed, there were only 2 other airliners at the terminal. Now, fast forward 30 years, my last trip is into Charlotte. I'm coming back from London, England, and I'm 150 miles away. I can see Charlotte.
Over the course of Wilkerson's flying career, Charlotte Douglas International continued to expand. Deputy Aviation Director Jack Christine says there's been careful and purposeful growth at the airport.
From 1978 into the early 80s, the airport was developing plans for what was then a parallel runway, which is currently our center runway now, and a new terminal building. And so the new terminal building opened up in 1982. The same year, there was an new air traffic control tower built.
Since then, it's just continued to boom and boom and boom with construction and adding.
This growth costs money. The 2018 annual operating budget was about $150 million.
Everything that the airport does and funds is done through the revenue that we generate. We do not use 1 penny of general tax fund dollars at the airport. Never have, never will.
Christine says the city employs about 650 people at the airport, but add in employees of airlines, contractors, and various support companies. He says that number expands to nearly 20,000 people working at the airport.
Well, last year, we served 46.9 million people through the facility. And that's a lot of people. That's about 120,000 people a day that move through the building. And so every day, we serve more people than Disney World. Today, we are the 6th busiest airport in the way of operations in the United States, 7th in the world. You know, we absolutely are one of the major airports in the national airspace system and now in the world in the way of connecting passengers. Any type of issue that we have in Charlotte quickly becomes an issue, not just for Charlotte, it becomes an issue for the national airspace system and all those outlying cities that we serve. And so it's definitely not a small facility anymore. It's a major player in the industry.
According to Gene Carney, retired assistant aviation director in charge of operations, CLT has worked hard at maximizing efficiency, starting with the runways.
Now there's 3 parallel runways, so they can operate triple approaches, which is necessary to accommodate the hub's operation, where they have a number of aircraft coming in at virtually the same time. The development of the airport architecturally, the terminal building in 1982 was specifically designed so that the concourse is fed to one central area in the main terminal building.
Christine says that all matters when
we are a hub to American Airlines. American Airlines is the largest airline in the world. Charlotte is their 2nd largest hub. In Charlotte, we have 9 banks a day that are part of the hub operation, which means 9 times a day, 100 airplanes come in and they transfer people between the airplanes, and then 100 airplanes go out. The airport is absolutely one of the biggest economic drivers in the region. We generate about $16.2 billion a year in economic impact for the city and the region and support about 225,000 jobs. And so we are one of the major employment centers for the city and the county and the surrounding counties.
Across the airfield, the Carolina Aviation Museum welcomes more than 60,000 visitors a year and houses a unique collection of historic aircraft.
This was used in Vietnam, and Vietnam was a helicopter war. This particular helicopter is called Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and was involved in an event in Vietnam where 20 Marines were rescued because one crewman, Mike Clausen, who later received the Medal of Honor for this, jumped out of the aircraft numerous times, rescuing his fellow Marines, and he was given orders not to do so.
Outside is a special C-130 military cargo plane.
This particular aircraft was used on many, many missions and retired in 2013, but the most famous mission was the Iran hostage crisis event. In 1979, roughly 3,000 militants stormed the U.S. Embassy in Iran. And this was a bunch of things going on in the political world with the United States relationship with Iran and Iran politics, but basically they took roughly 60 Americans hostage, and they embarked on a really risky mission, which ended up being called Operation Eagle Claw. And what happened was, just with the weather and the sand and the desert, one of the helicopters was taking off and flew into one of the C-130s and ended up 8 servicemen, Americans, were killed. A very interesting part of our American history.
Visitors also get to learn about Piedmont Airlines and the early days of passenger flight.
It changed the way we think about the world. Instead of it taking this long to get somewhere, you can now get there in a couple of hours. So it changed our entire way of life.
But it's an Airbus A320 on display that draws the most attention. You might recognize it as the plane from the Miracle on the Hudson.
January 15th, 2009, this plane was flying from LaGuardia to Charlotte, and they hit a flock of geese and ended up having to do Captain Sullenberger and co-pilot Jeff Skiles ended up performing an emergency landing in the Hudson River. Everybody survived, 155 people survived.
They have numerous artifacts from the legendary flight, personal effects of pilots and passengers. It's a time capsule from that fateful day. And recently, the Sullenbergers donated thousands of cards and letters they've received over the years.
That is kind of a beautiful thing, to look through piles of Christmas cards sent from passengers who were thanking him for basically giving them a second chance, a celebration of life. They're still alive, they're still experiencing their families, new babies have been born, and their lives have been able to go on because of his heroism that day, which he would not call heroism, he would call doing his job. Our mission has really been redefined in the last few years since we got the Miracle on the Hudson. And we have started looking at aviation as this system. There's a lot of parts and pieces that make aviation as safe as it is today and that have allowed it to grow as quickly as it has over a little over 100 years.
It also offers the museum an opportunity to chart its new organizational path. Not just being a history museum, but focusing on economic mobility in Charlotte through STEM education. Carolina Aviation Museum President Stephen Saucier.
There is a lot of talk going on in this field with regard to what we call lost Einsteins, and that there is brilliance in those communities. But the pathways to accessing that brilliance and giving them resources, to making them aware, to supporting them, scaffolding them through the educational pipeline so there is a viable pathway for them and their success is very different from demographic to demographic. Every one of those industries related to aviation and aerospace is very concerned about where their talent is coming from in the future. So give me a break. You have a domain here in Charlotte that's talking about where are we going to find economic opportunity and economic mobility for its students, and you have industry and aviation aerospace that's saying where are we going to get our future workforce from. Our role as a museum is to recognize those conversations and to act as a convener through our programs, our exhibits, our community engagement, our events. Everything we do, everything we touch, every conversation we have should be about bringing those into alignment so the kids can find that pathway to those opportunities. We have to think about the full complement of the STEM education ecosystem. This museum and the vision that we are designing, and the STEM education programs we are designing, and the innovative programs and the way we are designing our community engagement is to play a complementary role in that ecosystem.
There's a legacy of military service at Charlotte's airport. Since World War II, these runways have played strategic roles in the nation's defense and in times of need within the state.
Change it to a Y now, see?
In this small workroom, a group of volunteers works to digitize thousands of pictures documenting the history of the North Carolina Air National Guard 145th Airlift Wing.
All of these folks are good friends, and I feel like what they're doing is important. The unit has been here for, 75 years, and we're trying to create a history of it.
We have so much here. I mean, I consider it a national treasure. We have slides, negatives. The negatives go back to 1948 We've done an inventory of, a real quick inventory of everything that we consider we have. We consider we have about 500,000. Some guys even say we have about 1 million documents, photos, slides, negatives, videos.
Images like this one of retired Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Easterling, a World War II fighter pilot.
Well, I helped somebody get back to Japan. Who was that? Is that MacArthur that was trying to get back over there? I think so.
In 1948, the North Carolina Air National Guard established the 156th Fighter Squadron at the airport. Easterling was part of the squadron.
We were the old heads and the young folks were coming in, so we shared with them what we knew and they shared with us what they knew.
Over the years, the Air National Guard's mission has evolved. In the beginning, the fighter airplanes like the P-51 Mustang and the F-86 Sabre were stationed right here in Charlotte.
It was exciting back in those days. The fighter pilots out here, occasionally you could get a ride in a jet airplane and stuff like that.
After Korea, when our pilots came back, they came back to F-86s. And their mission was East Coast defense. Many times our guys were scrambled to get in the F-86s, take off for the East Coast, and they had to do some escorts, keep some Soviet airplanes off the coast, from the stories I've heard.
Eventually, though, the fighter planes went away.
After the 86s, we lost those in 1961, I think. Transitioned to the cargo 119 airplanes. Flew that for a short time just to get acclimated to multi-engine. From that went to the Connies, 4-engine passenger type. Main mission then was aeromedical. And then from after about 3 or 4 years in the Connies, we got 124s, and that's when it became MAC Transportation Unit.
The planes in mission would continually adapt. At one point, the squadron's C-130s, based in Charlotte, would fly firefighting missions on the West Coast. But in 2018, the North Carolina Air National Guard 145th Airlift Wing got upgraded, both in mission capability and aircraft.
We provide airlift, combat and humanitarian support for federal and state authorities. With our aircraft, the C-17, our primary mission is to provide a capability to transport personnel, cargo from point A to point B. And that could be within the continental United States or it could be around the world. Where in the past, we picked up our aircraft and personnel and went to a location and set up shop. Today, missions will be launched from Charlotte Douglas International Airport that will fly around the world. They will do their task, deliver the personnel and the cargo, and then they'll come back home here to Charlotte. We have the capability to provide a lot quicker support in natural disasters to local and state officials, which benefits the citizens, whether it's in the city of Charlotte or whether it's on the coast of North Carolina.
And there's no mistaking where the planes are from. Painted on the tail of these new C-17s, Charlotte.
It is the best kept secret around. Most people, if you go around town or even in the surrounding area and you talk about, they see you in uniform, they're like, are you passing through? And you tell them, no, I work here. Well, you work where? Well, I work out at the airport. What do you do? Do you do security? No. We have aircraft that are stationed there, and most people don't even know the role that the city of Charlotte plays in supporting national defense and has been for decades.
For the retirees working to save the history of this very active organization, there's a sense of pride.
The National Guard's configured as outstanding to get the mission done as cheaply as we do it.
I feel that this unit has served this city well.
Charlotte Douglas International Airport continues to evolve. The FAA has constructed a taller, new state-of-the-art air traffic control tower. And in the future, there are plans to add a 4th parallel runway to accommodate the ever-increasing number of daily flights. Flights that are bringing opportunity and economic possibilities to our region.
it really appears as if one of the major ingredients in the economy of the world going forward, aviation is it. If you are attached to some aviation facility, your economics in any community will be enhanced.
We're a long way from the humble, grassy airfields or needing the military to upgrade our runways. Charlotte Douglas International Airport connects to the world on a whole new level, with distinctive art to identify us, but not losing touch with our Southern hospitality, embracing history, and being careful stewards of the past. It's a unique combination of air travel in the Carolinas that will take us to new heights in aviation.
A production of PBS Charlotte.